Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. Happy Father's Day to all the dads that are watching today. I'm Pastor Tony Soldano, the lead pastor of All People's Church, and I have some incredible young men with me. Yes, I'm going to use that word. Some incredible young men with me here. 3 of them are fathers. 1 of them is not, and I'll explain that in just a moment. But first of all, we want to honor you. We want to love on you today. And I really wanted to bring a special program to you, not just another message per se, but I really wanted to bring a panel discussion because I believe that fathers are so critical, not only to the family, but really to the society. I've named this program, Nobody Told Me There Would Be Days Like This. And truly, it is a difficult day to be a father, to be a parent, to be honest. But from wherever you're watching, I hope that you'll gather your family, your children for the next few minutes and just allow us to speak into your home and into your lives as we greatly appreciate you and we trust that Holy Spirit will speak through our lives as we try to be as open, transparent, and as honest as we possibly can. So I want to introduce these young men to you. And they're all different. They all come from a different background. They have a different family scenario that we're going to talk about. And so, first of all, on my far right is Ranjiv Dutt. I won't tell you how old Ranjiv is, but he is a director in digital and information technology at a large NGO. He's been married for 11 years. I feel like this is like a game show. He's been married for, we're not dating anybody because you're not dating anybody, right, Hazen? No. We've been married. He's been married. Not we. He's been married for 11 years. He has 2 children, boys. Josiah, who's 9 years old, and Caleb, who's 5 years old. And so he loves to learn new instruments, write music, and play with anything that is techie. Does that, Ranjiv, does that make you a nerd or just...
Yes.
Okay, good answer.
Yes.
Good answer. All right. On my far left, we have Joel Tiffin. Joel is, he actually put his age here, 31 years old. He's been married almost 4 years. He already has 2 daughters. Woo, you've been busy, Joel. Yes. It's a good thing I got you out of the house. That's awesome. Isabella, who is 2, and Olivia. Christine, I'll be happy about that comment. Olivia, who is just a month and a half old, and now at a very young age of 31, you actually co-own a steel shop business. And I've known Joel since, before you were born, right? And you were born. I wasn't the pastor then, but I've known you 31 years. Wow, yeah, that makes me feel really, really old. All right, on my left here, we have Jairus Damon. Jairus works for the government. He's been married for 6 years, 3 girls and 1 boy, and we go from 18 years old all the way to 10 months. And so the young boy is 10 months, right? And yes. So congratulations. Here's a fun fact about Jairus. He's only doing this because there is no studio audience. We're actually in a room that is completely empty. We are social distancing to the best of our ability. I was going to cause them to wear masks, but I thought that would be a bit of a problem. And then finally, we have Azen Hack. Azen is 16 years old. He's not married. He doesn't have any children. Azen is actually the very first baby that I dedicated here at All People's Church. He was a fat little guy. Let me tell you, he's lost a lot of weight. He's doing well. A real academic. He's the son of the president of the board. And guys, the reason I asked Azen to come here, as I believe he's Generation Z, is what Z or Z is what they call you today. But I wanted to get a young person's perspective as we talk about fathering, as we talk about parenting, and all the struggles, not only that maybe we're facing as fathers, but this generation in particular. And so I'm hoping that we're going to have a real flow and a real flavor of what's going to come out here today. So before, I begin to ask you some questions, a couple of things that, I just wanted to note from the scriptures. Number one, the secret sauce of Jesus' life was this. He said, I live by the Father. And every prayer that is recorded that Jesus ever prayed, God has always called his Father. So here we have the Lord himself giving us an example of how critical his Father was, not only to his eternal life, but even to his natural life. Like we know that he had, Joseph was his earthly father for a while. We're not quite sure when Joseph died. At some point he passed away. But clearly Jesus relied on his father. And I think there's a picture there for all of us in family and in society, how critical dads are to the family. And we're watching, aren't we? We're watching a destruction of the family. We're watching a redefinition of the family. And we're also seeing an impact on society and an impact on children. So today we're going to try and be as practical, as real, as honest, and as transparent. These are everyday dads, working dads. These aren't professionals. We haven't coached them in any way, and other than telling them, here's the things that we'd like to talk about. So these are just real people, like all of us. I'm also a father. As a matter of fact, I'm about to become a grandfather, which has a whole different connotation on its own. And so I have two beautiful daughters, and I just bless them and appreciate them. But let's start at the past. Ranjiv, I'm going to start with you. Let's start with our background a little bit. And I want you to answer this question. When you look at your past, right? You weren't raised necessarily in a Christian home, although your mom got saved. What would you say, without throwing anybody under the bus, but what would you say when you look at your past, how maybe your dad brought you up or raised you and trained you? Would you say, I don't think I would do that again? And yet, what was a great thing that you would say, this was a great win in my life?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So looking back, to give everybody a bit of a history, so I grew up in a home where my mom was a Christian and my dad didn't identify with the Christian faith, and that comes with some complications. But as I look at my dad was a fantastic dad. He is a fantastic dad. Great qualities. And I think the key question here, and as we're looking at as being fathers, is it's not necessarily a question of being a good dad, but it's about being a biblical father. And I think there's a difference. I think there's a lot of good dads in the world that are not Christian. They'll die for their children. They'll do anything for their children. But if we look at Scripture, that's not what we're called to be. We're not called to be just good dads. We're called to be biblical fathers and really imitating Jesus and the Father and the relationship they had. So for my father, I saw all the natural, amazing things that he did. He cared for us. He provided for us. He's a very caring man. But the difference that it came into is when we look at spiritual fathering. So there was an element of the physical fathering, but the spiritual fathering wasn't necessarily there. But that's where church community became so important. That's where pastors became so important. That's where mentorship and coaching and discipleship came so important for me, because although all my needs were met on the physical, there was a gap in the spiritual element of fatherhood. And as a result, and because of church community, because of pastors and those who came into my life, I was never lacking in that area either. Which goes to show that you don't necessarily need to be a biological father to father somebody.
Wow. So here's what I'm hearing you say. You can be a good dad, but then to be a great dad, there's a biblical, spiritual component to it. That's excellent. Joel, what do you think? Same question. What worked well? What would you change?
I'm from a broken home. My parents got separated when I was 16. My brother was 13. And my relationship with my father has been tumultuous at times. It has been, good at times. When my parents got separated, it wasn't good. We weren't getting along. Trying to be my own man and being a punk teenager, we had a lot of friction. Anytime he would try and discipline me or do anything, it was a fight. It was an argument. And then when he moved out, that changed the entire dynamic of our relationship. There were seasons where, we were pretty close. There were seasons where he left and where I didn't see him for a time. And that was very difficult. Not having a father there every day, not having a father present through certain milestones of your life was definitely a hardship. And I know one of the things that my dad always said to me was, I don't know where I fit in your life. Once my parents split up, I don't know where I belong. I don't know what my role is for you anymore. And that was so baffling to me. Now we have a great relationship. Now we're close. Now, any issues and any hardships that have happened have been healed, have been restored. We get along great. But I always held on to that. What do you mean you don't know where you fit in my life? What do you mean you don't know what your role is in my life? And so for me, that has been a driving force with my daughters of always being there. I need to be there. I need to be active in everywhere, in every shape of their life. I mean, she's only 2, but in putting her to bed, in bathing her, in her routines right now and going forward, to the point where I'm going to probably annoy her. Really annoy her with just always being in her life and bothering her.
So you're a hands-on dad because
absolutely.
you believe that that's critically
Absolutely.
important. Jairus, what do you think?
It's kind of the same thing. I came from a broken home, so it's kind of like my mom has done the raising, the majority of me and my brother, and I'm just still trying to figure out what it is to be a man at this point. But it's difficult, but I'm going to keep on trekking, and I don't want to make the same mistakes that my father's made.
Awesome. Hey, Asa, tell us, a 16-year-old, it's a tough time. Life is changing for you. What do you appreciate? What do you appreciate about your dad? And maybe what don't you appreciate as a 16-year-old? I know you're a wonderful kid. I know your family personally, but how would you answer that openly and honestly?
See, there's a lot of things I don't appreciate. No, I'm kidding. I've been tremendously blessed to have 2 Christian parents who are built with values and have always been there for every step of my life. And I'm extremely grateful to God for that. But when looking at my relationship with my dad, probably the greatest thing I appreciate would be communication. Because at every event, whether it's a fight or whether we're on perfectly good terms, he's always there to talk. Whether it be spiritual or school, whether it be friend or faith, he's always there with me. There's always that communication line open. That there's someone I can rely on. And quite earnestly, he is my best friend. And I know that he wants the best for me everywhere. And because he wants the best for me everywhere, he's constantly pushing me, constantly putting me in situations to test me, but to encourage me to fulfill the potential that he sees in me.
Wow. So, Ranjiv, let's go by that word, test. That was excellent, Asa. I'm going to read Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 4 for you. I'm going to read it from the Message Bible. And it says, "Fathers, don't exasperate." Another translation says, "Don't provoke." Don't exasperate or provoke your children by coming down hard on them. So interesting what Azan is saying there. It says, take them by the hand, right, Joel? Take them by the hand and lead them in the way of the master. So, Ranjiv, what does that look like? We live in a very entitled society today, and we want the best for our children. We want them to reach their potential. But here Paul says to the Ephesians, don't exasperate them, don't provoke them. Don't be too hard on them. Where's that balance? Where's that tension, Ranjiv? And how do you manage that with 2 boys that seem to be, from my perspective, are very different, in personality?
Yeah, so Josiah and Caleb are very different in personality and how. So I agree with the scripture, of course, that we are not to come down on them, because I think that doesn't necessarily teach them the way in which they need to go. The Bible talks about train up a child in the ways, not change up a child in the ways. So how do we train them in what God has given them? So for me, as I'm looking at, if we want to call it discipline, if we want to look at in terms of correction, I think the first thing we always got to remember is our children are people. They have feelings, they have emotions, but they're not at the emotional intelligence level where they can comprehend things the same way. So I think it's really important that as fathers, we model ourselves the same way that we would model ourselves, or the father would model himself to us when we ask him for forgiveness. There is correction, there is conviction, so don't get me wrong. I think we do need to correct our children in love. But we need to understand who they are individually and ensure that we're not pushing buttons that would actually send them backwards and not allow them to understand. So I think there's an element, there isn't a silver bullet in terms of this is how you need to train your children, or this is how you discipline your children. But I think it really becomes a personal level. Just like the father is personal with us, and the way he may chasten you is different than the way that he may do to me, because we have relationship. It's the same way with our children. It's unique and it's individual depending on the child.
So, Jairus, let's talk a little bit about this. You have what I call the Brady Bunch,
Yes.
the mini
Yes.
Brady Bunch. 18 years old,
Yes.
all the way down to your son, which is 10 months.
Yes.
2 of the children, the 2 youngest, are your biological children. The 2 older ones are not your biological children, the 2 daughters. And so you have this blended family. Tell us a little bit about how not to provoke your daughters, how not to provoke your infant children in a scenario where you have this tension and this complexity of Two of them are not your children. Two of them are your children. Tell us a little bit about your dynamics at home.
So coming into the relationship with my wife, she's had 2 children from a previous relationship. The thing I hold on to the most is I know they're not mine, but they're mine. That's good. That's what I like really and truly.
So they're not yours, but they're yours.
That's it. Yeah. And I don't show favorites with regards to my kids or Shireen's kids. They're both our kids. And to me, that's the number one thing that I try and hold on to.
So there's a consistency.
Yes.
So nobody feels, well, we know we're not his kids.
No, not at all.
They're
No.
all your kids.
Yep, absolutely.
And I believe that, Ranjiv, goes back to what you were saying, because I believe that's a biblical principle, because we're all adopted into the family of God, aren't we? Hey, Joel, let me ask you a tough question. What's the number one thing you think you need to develop as a dad? What's the number one thing? I know your kids are young, but...
Patience.
Wow.
100% patience.
Yep.
We were very blessed with Isabella. She was a super easy baby. She slept well. She ate well. She was chill. She was wonderful. Olivia is a wonderful baby. But she is a hands-on baby. She cries a lot. She doesn't like when you put her down. And it's hard. When you're exhausted, when you've come from a long day at work, and she's crying, and she's fed, and she's changed, and she should be chill, and she's crying. And you have to walk with her, and you have to calm her down. It's exhausting, and it's absolutely patience. And Christina will agree with me 1,000% that it's definitely patience.
Jairus, what would you say?
Same thing. Patience.
Same thing?
Patience.
Well,
patience,
you know that
patience.
patience comes with tribulation. Ranjiv, what would you say? Number one thing.
I would actually agree. I think patience is an important thing, and different phases and different areas of your life, different seasons, is a different type of patience that you have to have. So I agree.
Asen, if you were going to be a dad, or when you're going to be a dad, what would you say would be that number one trait that you would work on based on your relationship with your dad right now?
That's a difficult question, because there's a lot of values and a lot of pieces that come together to bring the puzzle of being a father. But in my opinion, the biggest thing would be to have values to base everything off of. Because without values, you are lost, right? And with values, you can portray them, you can install them. Whether you like it or not, it will end up somewhere in your child. So with values, you're not necessarily hands-on bringing a gift, but having those values within yourself will always have an impact on your child.
That's awesome. Guys, let's talk a little bit about communication. Let's talk about what the Father did with Jesus. We know that when he was being baptized, the Father affirmed his Son. He said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I'm well pleased." As a matter of fact, we have 2 things that are recorded of all the things that the Father said to Jesus. Those are the 2 things that are recorded in 2 different portions of Scripture. And it's that whole idea of affirmation. It's that whole idea of identity. This is who you are. You're beloved. You're my son. I'm well pleased in you. And I want to talk a little bit about this. I want to talk about how you affirm your children. I want to talk about how we correct our children. But I want to talk about identity, because there is so much identity confusion today. We know that governments and forces are trying to take parental rights and privileges away from you. They don't even want you to talk about identity to your children anymore. They don't want you to tell your son that he's a son and he's a boy, or that your daughter is a girl, that somehow they're supposed to, figure that out. And I just want to go on record by saying that I believe that's absolutely ludicrous. And I believe we have a responsibility, especially as fathers, because I believe their identity comes from their fathers. And so how are you, and Joel, I'm going to come to you, how are you navigating this very difficult subject? How are you affirming your daughters, right? They're very young, they're very impressionable. As a matter of fact, psychologist tells us that by the age of 5, personalities are already set in place. And so you have great responsibilities with your children, because you have children, and some of them are a little bit older, but Joel, you have 2 daughters. How do you handle that? What do you do? Do you think about that? Are you fearful? Do you wake up thinking, I better not say the wrong thing today? How do you handle that?
Well, I think that my role as a father is absolutely crucial in their entire how they perceive relationships with men, how they perceive relationships with other people, whether it be friendships, by my example of how I treat Christina, how I treat them, if I'm favoring one or the other. For me, obviously, I pray over them. I pray over Isabella every night. I pray for sound mind. I pray for a peace over her life. I call her a girl. I say that she is a strong girl. I say that she is a smart girl. I say that there is a destiny over her life, that there is a purpose over her life, that God has called her, that God has set her aside. I speak to that every single night when I put her to sleep. I think that healthy hugging, healthy affection, healthy affirmation, how I call her beautiful, I call her gorgeous. I want her to be confident. I pray and I speak confidence because there's such an insecurity with women and young women nowadays, and that's why they jump to relationships, and that's why they give themselves and their love and their bodies to stupid men, is because they don't have that example of a father. And so, yes, I'm definitely very intentional. Certainly having two young, beautiful girls.
Awesome.
About what my role is as a father.
And your daughters are beautiful. There's no question.
I'm in trouble.
What about your handsome young man, Ranjiv? Are you afraid? Are you afraid of this subject? Are you afraid to be a dad and to call your sons boys? Are you afraid of this whole confusion in genders that is going on today?
No, and to reiterate what Joel says, the Bible talks about there is death and life in the tongue. So regardless of what they may think, regardless of what anyone else may think, I'm speaking into existence the things that I'm expecting to come to fruition in their life. And we have the laws of the land, but ultimately we also have the kingdom. And so me as a father, what I want to do is I want to speak to them kingdom language. I want to speak to them what the kingdom says, because laws of the land will change. Opinions of the land will change. It did if you look back 20, 30, 40 years ago. But God's kingdom is never changing. So to me, if I affirm to them not just who they are, but who they are in Christ, then God will take care of all that other stuff for them, because it's my responsibility to communicate a relationship that I can then remove myself and put God in. So for me, my communication is, yes, I affirm who you are, but more importantly, God affirms who you are in Him. So let me teach you who you are in Him.
That's really good.
Jairus, you have two teenagers. Again,
Yes.
I know your family, beautiful daughters. You have a toddler,
Yes.
London, who's she might as well be a doll, honestly. Another gorgeous child, and of course, your son. But what about the teenagers in particular? How are you handling this? And I'm going to come to Hazen in just a moment. But you have to navigate some very interesting discussions in your home, I'm sure. Jairus, how do you handle that?
So with regards to, I guess, the older kids now, it's a discussion that happens with me and my wife and them as well. I can't do it by myself, just to be truthfully honest. It's very touchy for me. Shreen and I handle it very well. The girls understand, they know, and we do it from a biblical angle, so they understand we're just not just pulling things out of thin air. And they do understand, and it's just, you have to have patience with them, like what we said before, and it's all about understanding that they're individual girls, right? So you have to come at them differently.
Excellent. So you're very unique. It's not a cookie cutter approach. No. I like that. Hazen, you must have a lot of heat regarding this subject. And what are the things that you're hearing and you have to discuss? And how do you navigate this as a 16-year-old in the midst of this generation?
So the things I see are a lot different from the way I've been brought up. The world is changing rapidly. But what I need to do is stay maintained on the values and principles that my mom and dad have installed in me. So coming from a biblical background and as well as the real background, which we both know are necessary, right? So a quick story. I was a little kid. I've been in the church all my life, but I used to run around the church. All I wanted to do was play with my friends. I didn't care for Sunday school. I didn't care to be in services. But then one day my dad told me, and he was leading this ministry at the time, he told me that you need to serve. He always believes in blessings, and he believed that blessings come from a young age. So he made me start serving. He made me start serving as a greeter in the church. And I thank God for that, because the skills I developed, the blessings I received, and the person who I transformed into just because of that small role, not just being there as a kid running around the church, just here for fun, just here because my parents bring me. I became a member of that church, and I've evolved further. Then going to the world aspect of it, being a real parent as well. My dad always told me that school comes first. This is important because this will build the rest of your life. And I never took it seriously. Going from grade 8 to high school, it's a big change. People would know, the Generation Z, as Pastor likes to call it, would know that this is a big change. It's a lot different being in an elementary school, going to a high school. This is the beginning of the rest of your life that you can say at any transformational point. But this is a real big jump. And my father pushed me a little bit of heat, but now as you grow with the emotional intelligence, you evolve and you understand where it's coming from. My father pushed me to go for a program. It's called the International Baccalaureate Program. He pushed me to get into that, and I had no interest whatsoever. I'm not gonna lie, I had no interest whatsoever. None of my friends were going to that school. None of my friends were trying that hard, and I didn't think that I needed it. But based on that, my father having the values that he did, understanding what it would do for me, he pushed me. He told me study 10 days straight, and if you get in, then we'll decide. I got in, thanks to God, thanks to God's blessing, and another one in my life. So based off those values, you need to know who you are and install them in your life.
That's awesome. So let's talk a little bit about this pushing and the word heat, and let's talk a little bit about discipline. So we have teenagers, we have toddlers, we have some elementary. And Ranjiv, I'm going to start with you because there's so many voices. I grew up in the era of you get hit, and we're okay. We didn't have brain damage or anything like that. As a matter of fact, Joel, when my parents would go to a parent-teacher interview, my parents would tell the teacher, if he gets out of line, you can hit him. Literally, giving them today, it's the students that hit the teachers. But that's the era that we grew up in. I grew up with the strap. I don't know if you know what the strap is. It's about a 12-inch leather thick thing that, if you got out of line and you were sent to the principal's office, you get the strap. And that was my era. Today, today you can't touch anybody. I mean, they don't even want you to discipline your own children. And this is why I think we have so many entitled brats that are running around. I mean, we have 28-year-olds that all they want to do is be in the basement and play, games. And I'm not even kidding. This is the truth. So let's talk a little bit about discipline. How do we discipline our children? Do we discipline our boys different than our girls? Is there a difference in that? Is discipline? And what have you found, and I know it's individual, but what have you found in your home that's worked best? Ranjiv, let's start with you. What would you say is your number one key to discipline?
Yeah, so depending on their age, it was different. This has been a learning experience because I think the key to discipline as a biblical father is discipline should never be a result of your anger.
That's good.
Discipline should only be a result of trying to teach them obedience. And I think the importance of obedience, or really discipline, is about listening, not because of I am your father, but because I'm trying to train you so that eventually you would listen to God the first time. So for me, discipline looked at many different ways, and Josiah is a completely different person than Caleb. So Caleb, I can give him the look. You guys have gotten the look, right? So I could be smiling and just give him the look. At that point, he's straight up, tears in his eyes. And he's straightened up. Josiah now, though, is a little mouthy. Josiah, I will say something, and he'll have an answer right back. So Josiah, I got to play a little bit differently. See, I got to go a little bit into the mind. Not to bring him down, but to get him to think. Right. See, Caleb will respond to a look, but Josiah will respond to his intellect. So what I do is I say, okay, so what is it that you're actually trying to say, young man? And then he'll explain. I was like, what does that actually mean? Wow. And eventually, over time, he starts to realize how silly he actually is sounding, to the point where he's like, okay, Daddy, I get your point. Can I stop answering your questions now? Wow. So I think that was when they were young, a little bit younger. When you get a little bit older, Josiah is 9 years old now. So I think a lot of it is questions, me asking them, what are you thinking about it? Because again, I can tell them what to do, but when they get older, are they going to understand and realize why I was saying that?
So Ranjiv, I heard you say a couple things. Number one, there's stages. Number two, there's personalities, and you got to be creative, right? Now Isabella's what, 2 years old? So terrible twos. We're coming into now Christina's a phenomenal mom.
Yeah.
But Joel, what about, because you're the head of the home, you're the boss, right? Have you had to? Do you even have the spine to discipline? I gotta laugh at all of these guys because Pastor Carol and I will watch the pictures on Instagram and Facebook, and we're like, how can they discipline these gorgeous looking kids? And so I feel for you guys, honestly.
Well, with Olivia, I just take away the bottle, and that seems to work. She cries. With Isabella, it's been really interesting because she's very smart. She's very smart, and already at 2, she knows how to manipulate. She knows how to play one parent against the other. She's asking me for something that her mother's already told her no to. She's trying to do things that she already knows she's not supposed to. And so, and then now she's having tantrums, partially because of the baby. She's kind of doing a little bit of reverting. And so it's just, to me right now, being firm. And if you're going to have a tantrum, certainly out of nowhere, you're not going to get the thing that you want. Wow. So it's holding firm in your no. It's letting your no's be no right now. And then, just patience. More patience. Not like you said, getting angry and yelling at her. Meanwhile, she doesn't need to be yelled at. And it's gauging the moment. And then I'm trying to talk to her, and I'm trying to get her to kind of articulate more her feelings and, okay, why are you like that? Which is hard because she's 2.
So we want to be very clear, my friends, right? We're not talking about punishment, because here again, Ranjiv, when you said being biblical, discipline and punishment are 2 different things. And so even Father will discipline us, but he doesn't punish us. Jairus, you have a blended family. Let's go back to that. You have 2 teenage daughters. They're not necessarily your biological daughters, but they're yours. What was the number one key thing that either you had to use to discipline, or did you just back away entirely and go hide in the washroom? What did you do?
Take away cell phones.
Yeah. Oh, cell phones,
That's
the big
good.
one.
Don't do
Yes.
that.
I'm going to write that down.
Did you hear that, parents? Take away cell phones.
That's how you get their attention, right? They take their cell phones, there's nothing to do, right? And then you have their undivided attention.
And Jairus, it doesn't kill them, does it?
No, it doesn't.
They actually live.
They'll survive.
doesn't
You
kill
can
them?
live without a cell phone. can't you?
Absolutely.
Wow, it's
Yeah.
amazing.
I turned out fine without a cell phone.
So what you're saying is we can actually take some things away from our children.
Absolutely.
And they're going to be okay.
Yes,
And Jairus, it's okay to say no.
for sure.
Yeah.
You're not abusing anyone.
Awesome. Asa, what was the number one thing that worked with you?
The number one thing that worked with me,
Discipline-wise, yeah.
discipline-wise, would be explaining. So communication again. Like Ranjiv was saying, they have to understand and think why you're saying what you are saying, and why you're doing what you are doing. It's always, if you look at discipline, discipline is to train and to mold, not to punish, not to destroy. So talking about discipline, living without my phone for a week isn't going to kill me. Like when you lose something, you realize how much it means to you. It doesn't mean that much. It'll teach me a lesson that I should not be doing this, that this is not right, this is not, again, with our values as Christian people,
Right.
Based on our values as a family. So yeah, discipline goes with...
But Asa, you also come from a very high reward family. In other words, I know how your family rewards you. So,
Yeah.
so not only are they communicating and at times maybe taking things away from you, and I think you're all like this, that I have observed is yes, you communicate, yes, you take things away, but then by positive reinforcement, you're highly rewarding people. And I think that's critical. I've seen you all do that. Did you want to say something there, Ranjiv?
I have a funny example. I ran out of things at one point to do with Josiah and Caleb, so I got real creative, and maybe you guys should try this. If you run out of things, I asked them, what should I do?
Oh,
Yeah. So I put them in my shoes, and I said, I'm the child, I'm you, you're me. What should I do? And that threw them off. They're like,
It's the worst question. I've had
I was
that
like,
before.
should I do something? Yes. Should I not do something? No.
Wow.
And it completely threw them off. And Josiah's like, I think I should go in my room and think about it.
Wow.
Sure. So if you're running out of ideas.
So Ranjiv, this is biblical.
Reverse the role.
When David counted the army, the Lord said, what should I do to you? Here's your 3 choices. So that here again is biblical. Before we land this plane, I want to just shift gears for a moment because I want to talk about, I don't necessarily like the word balance. I personally like the word rhythm better than balance, but your professional individuals, your business owners, you have executive positions, government, this NGO. How do you, and I want to use the word balance, but really I'm looking for the word rhythm. How do you, basically manage all this stuff? Ranjiv, all of you are incredibly involved, in the church, in ministry. So you have family life, you have work life, you have pastor who has expectations and demands, right? How do we balance all this? How do we find the rhythm? And is there tension in that, or somehow you guys are just amazing at it? You just come home and does anybody remember Leave It to Beaver? Remember that? Is it Cleaver? What was his name? What was the dad's name before your time? I wish Pastor Carolyn was here. She would help me.
No one knows.
I think it was Cleaver. I think it was his name.
You don't know how confused I am
But
right now.
yeah, this is even before my time a little bit. But are you these perfect dads? But Ranjiv, how do we find the balance in that? And is there some frustration? Is there some sense sometimes that I'm failing? I'm not doing a good job. Maybe I'm not where I should be, and maybe at the same time I'm actually where I should be. Because when I take care of God, I know God's going to bless my family. Tell me a little bit about that, guys.
Yeah, so for balance, I think when I was first a father, I constantly thought of balance in terms of time. But I realized balance is not about time. It's actually about quality. So quantity and quality are two different things. You could spend a lot of time with your children, hours, but not quality time with them. And I think the difference where I've been able to find the balance or the groove or the cadence and the rhythm, whatever analogy or whatever word you want to use, is understanding that the time that I have has to be quality time. I don't have time to just make it fluff. I have to get right in. So if I'm working all day and I come to church, first of all, I'm modeling for them what they need to do and to see balance in life. But secondly, I'm spending quality time with them. When I have that hour or 2 hours before they go to bed, it's not hey, I'm watching TV, you guys do your thing. No, I'm with them. What do you want me to do? You're gonna dress me up? Okay. I'm gonna wear crazy things? Okay, but they're gonna remember my dad sat down and let me do all these crazy things to him. He didn't plop himself in front of a TV, drink a bottle and say, no, I'll talk to you later or on the weekend. And it's the same thing, whether it's in church, whether it's at work, we have to spend quality time in what we're doing.
Joel.
Yeah, that's 100% it. I mean, for me, my work is very physical, it's very demanding, and it's very exhausting. So to work a 9-10 hour day and come home, you're spent. And Isabella, because of Olivia and because Christina, just can't do the same things I can do, throw her around, jump around, she's ready. When I get home, she's ready to play. She's ready to run around the house. She
knows Daddy's home.
Exactly. She's ready for me to jump and throw her on the couch and throw her. Like, that's all we do. And so I need to be energized. I need to be ready. And whatever she wants to do, I try and do it as much as possible. I try and put my phone down, and I try and be intentional, whether it's listening to music with her or building a puzzle with her or playing with her toys. You're absolutely right. It's the intentionality and the quality of the time that you spend with them.
Jairus.
With the teens now, they want no parts of me or Shireen.
You're not the cool dad anymore.
No,
bro. You're like
no.
you're like the old. He's like,
yeah, old news, right? They want to do their own thing, which is fine. But when they want to watch a movie or anything like that, definitely into it. And with the little ones, whatever they want to do, let's do it. Yeah.
that's powerful, guys, because as they grow, it really becomes almost like an invitation. It becomes a little bit of in their terms, but they know where we are. They know where to find us. And so here's my last question, Aizen. I'm going to ask you first, and then guys, I'm going to ask you guys, what would you say to new dads? What would you say to dads in general? If you were to pick one word, what would you say to new dads or to dads if there was one word that you could just give a definition to? And Aizen, I want to ask you before I get to the guys here, what would you say to your generation? If you were to speak to your generation today, knowing what you know about them, and guys, can you believe this guy's like 16 years old? It's just, I think I was playing with dinky cars, little cast cars when I was 16. But Aizen, what would you say to your generation?
So talking to my generation, specifically Generation Z, the most important thing for me personally that I believe should apply to everyone would be to build your life. This can be socially, this can be spiritually, this can be education-wise. But the most important thing is always building. And there are three main things that help you do this. First would be to keep your eye on the goal. There's a lot of enticing things in the world, but know who you are, stay with your values, and know where you want to get, because that together will bring you to that place. Secondly, would be to trust people. It sounds very cliche, but trust older people and the father figures you have in your life, not just the father figures, anyone who's a mentor in your life, because they have already reached a higher level, not just in numbers, not just in their age number, but they also have a higher understanding than you at the time. So something they are trying to portray to you, it should resonate with you. And that goes with my third point, that actually take from them. Don't just say that you got it. Don't just stand there and listen to it when it doesn't mean anything. The revelation they are trying to share with you is pointless if it doesn't change and work in your reality. It doesn't mean anything if you proclaim that, oh yeah, I know this. Oh yeah, thank you, I learned it. But it doesn't mean anything if you don't practice it. So work to the goal, work to build your life, and work to maintain your figure.
That's awesome. Ranjiv, tell us, what would you say to a new dad?
I would say you said one word, right? So I think the key word for me as I'm thinking about this would be presence. Make your presence known in your family. And I was thinking about it, and I was like, what is the thing that in Scripture they were desiring the most? And it was the presence of God. And God took his presence and he said, okay, now I'm going to give it to you in the Holy Spirit. And now you being a father are going to demonstrate and be that presence to your children. So as we seek the Father's presence, the first place we should be able to find that is in our parents. So I think presence is the word that I would go with.
So good, so good. Joel?
That
What's
was
your
good.
word?
I wish I went before you. Wow. I think perspective. I think perspective would be my word. If for new fathers, certainly, those first few weeks it's a tunnel. It's tunnel vision. It feels endless. You're not sleeping. You're not eating well. You're not understanding what's going on. It ends. It gets better. It gets easier. Have perspective and realize it's going to get easier. You're going to get better. And yeah, that's it.
Wow. Jairus, one word, tell us.
Like Aizen said before, communicate with the kids. I think that's very important. Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, I just want to thank you. I know you're all very, very busy, and I know that life is so uncertain and so stressful these days, but thank you for taking time and sharing, not only with the APC family, but with all of us. I really honor you and appreciate all of you. Thank you for your transparency, your wisdom. Dads, you're important. You are critically important to your family, to your home, to your society, to your ministry. This is why I wanted to put on this program for you today. Listen, it's not about being perfect, right, guys? It's about getting it done. Getting it done is more important than being perfect. There was only, and there will only ever be one perfect Father, and He's in heaven. For the rest of us, it's an art. It's not a science. We're working on it. We're improving day by day. And we're maturing. And so not only are our children maturing, but we're maturing. And so bless you. Thank you for being with us. Please like and share our program today, even with maybe people that don't know Jesus. They're not Christians. And maybe it'll give them an opportunity to say, what does that mean to be a biblical dad? And who are these gentlemen that have shared their hearts? And so I honor you and we honor you. Thank you for being with us today. God bless you.